Now, the world talks about being successful, but the Bible talks about being fruitful. And so if you've read either the Old Testament or the New Testament, you will have heard that word, and you may have some idea of what the scriptures are talking about. But let's dig a little deeper, because we do see it from the very beginning of our story in Genesis, all the way to images and instructions in Revelations. And so this is a very important word for us to fully understand. So when is the first time that God mentions fruitful and being fruitful? It's in Genesis 1, isn't it? God created the earth, he created mankind, and he said, be fruitful. Now, they would have asked the same question that we would. What does that mean? And if we look at the natural world, God uses the simple physical things in creation to help us to understand things that are quite complex. Isn't that right? It's hard to understand. What is God like? So God made fathers and said, I'm like a father. I'm like a king. I'm like a shepherd. And those are simple things in our natural world that our natural minds can understand. And it helps us to understand spiritual things that are perhaps beyond just our mental capacity. And so when God said to Adam and to Eve, be fruitful, they would have said, what does that mean? And they didn't have far to look for an answer, did they? Now, I want you to get your own basket of fruit, okay? I grabbed some fruit where I live and put it in a basket. I wonder what's growing where you are. Now, it's important to have a basket of fruit, okay? Don't just watch me. I want you to have your own, because it's part of being able to smell it, part of being able to look at the colors, and yes, part of being able to take a bite. So look at your own fruit. Okay, these are figs. I picked it off the tree in my yard on the way to class. Where I live, it's quite hot, and so we're able to grow bananas. We have papaya. It's another common fruit grown in many countries that I have visited. In Nigeria, they call it the popo. In our country, we call it the papaya. So when Adam and Eve wondered, what does it mean to be fruitful? All they had to do was turn the head, and what would they have seen? Fruit. But because we know they were in the garden, we know there were many different kinds of fruit. Can you imagine how the fruit must have been? No preservatives, no pollution. Can you imagine how much we enjoy the taste of fruit? What did their fruit taste like? What kind of fruit did they have that has long gone? So they didn't have far to look to consider what God might mean when he said, I want you to be fruitful. So look at your fruit, okay? Pick up a piece and take a smell. It's a fig. It's quite sweet. And here's an apple, biggest apple I ever saw, honestly. And a little thing called a pomegranate. Now, what do you like about fruit? Everybody likes fruit that I know. What do you like about fruit? Okay, I want you to think about it. And I want you to pick up one of your little colored pieces of paper. Now, this was in your instructions, and you can cut out a shape of fruit in color, or you can draw it on a tree. So either way, I'm going to use this. this is going to be one of the things that we refer to again and again. So it's very important to actually create your own tree. I know it may feel a little silly to be cutting out colored paper in your living room, but the act of doing this, creating colors and shapes for yourself, is really a part of activating all parts of the brain. It's a part of engaging all of us in the learning process. So trust me on this, and get out your little colored piece of paper, and I want you to write, what are some of the things you like about fruit? I actually want you to do this on 3 pieces of paper. So for me, I'm going to write that it's sweet. I really like sweet things. And that's why I like fruit, because it's sweet. Okay? Now I want you to take 3 pieces of paper, and I want you to think of 3 different reasons why you like fruit. So take a minute and do that now. And I'm doing it on mine as well. Okay. Now, in case you aren't sure, all you have to do is pick up your fruit basket again. Have a look at it. What did you decide? I know for me, I love the colors of fruit. So vibrant, so fresh. I mean, look at this orange. Isn't that great? I mean, it just glows with colors. You can't make paint that color, can you? And let's see, pomegranate. I love all the different shades of red and kind of into a deep purple and out into a light orange. So many colors. That's one of the things that I love about fruit, is that it's colorful. Okay? I also love that it's nutritious. Okay, I'm really trying to think about, how do I take good care of my body? Well, it matters what I put into it. And so it has a value to me that when I eat fruit, it's giving me vitamins and nutrients that keep me healthy and strong and active. And the different fruits have different types of vitamins, so they're nutritious. Okay? And then the first one, the easy one, sweet. I really like sweet taste. Which one is your favorite? I think I'm going to take a bite of this fig, because I just picked it. Take a bite of your favorite kind. Isn't that nice? God did that, didn't he? And he made all the different kinds, all the different colors. So let's start our tree together. Okay, so hopefully, if you haven't yet, take time now to draw yourself a tree. Okay, tomorrow in our next session, I'll show you a different kind of tree model that you could use if you want. But for now, we're going to work off our paper model. So here's the one for sweet. And I'm just going to put it right over here on my tree, because one of the qualities about fruit is that it's sweet and it's colorful and it's nutritious. What did you put? Some people say it's easy to get to. You don't have to spend a lot of time preparing and cooking. Some people say it's refreshing. It's got a lot of liquid in it usually, and so it's quite refreshing when you're thirsty and you're tired. Quick fix, quick way to get some water into you. It's fragrant. The scent of it is so sweet. Imagine what that garden was like. So there's lots of different qualities about fruit. And Have you ever thought about this? When God said to be fruitful, that would have been the first thing that Adam and Eve would have understood, isn't it? They would have turned around and they would have been face to face with a banana and said, oh, God said be fruitful. That means be tasty, be sweet, be nutritious, be refreshing, be colorful, fragrant. Okay? That would have been the first understanding that they had. Perhaps they came face to face with a pomegranate. Those are hard to open up. And so the first thing for us to understand is being fruitful is very simply, are you refreshing to those around you? Is your life vibrant and full of color? Are you nutritious? Do you add life and joy and strength to those around you? So it may seem silly, but that's where God started with Adam and Eve, and that's where our understanding can begin as well. Now, what else can we learn from that Genesis 1 account? When God said, I want you to be fruitful and multiply, he was saying, I want you, he said, I want all those things, all the plants and all the animals to multiply after their own kind. And so when he was speaking to Adam and Eve, he was saying, I want you to be fruitful. I want there to be more of you. So who were they? What kind of people were they that God considered them fruitful and wanted them to multiply? Well, let's look at what God asked them to do. Because if he asks us to do something, it means we can. It means he's given us the ability to be obedient. So let's look at some of those things that God gave Adam and Eve to do, and let's see what we can learn from them about who he designed them to be, who we are supposed to be. Now, one of the first things that we see in Genesis 1 is God gave Adam the responsibility to name the animals, didn't he? I just happened to have brought some of my little animal friends with me. And there's an incredible variety of animals on the planet. So I brought some from different continents. Lots of different animals here, okay? Now, we all know the story that God told Adam, you name the animals. Now think, what is your favorite animal? If you're not sure, pick one of these, okay? Elephant, gorilla maybe. How about a cute little kangaroo, hops around, or the elegant zebra. Okay, which one's your favorite? Pick one. Now, I want you to take a minute and I want you to think of a new name. What would you name that animal? Okay, so think about it. What would you name that animal? Gonna have another bite of my fruit. Well, what did you decide? If I were going to pick up my friend the zebra, I might call him Stripey. I might call him Runner. I might call him Camo Man, Camouflage Man. What did you call yours? And the question is, how did you decide? Okay, if I look at my zebra, I think, well, what does he look like? How does he move? What does he eat? What are the qualities that I observe about my friend, this animal? And how do I capture that in a name? And I wonder how you decided what you would name your animal. Perhaps you used some of those same processes. And so when God said, Adam, I want you to name all the animals, you realize that was quite a task. And what did Adam have to be able to do? Okay? He had to think. He had to observe. He had to analyze. He had to put in categories. He had to notice distinctions between different kinds of animals. He had to use quite a lot of thinking abilities. He had to be quite creative with language. Okay? So those are all abilities that God gave him. Now, what else did God give him? God gave him responsibility, and God gave him authority. And there's no record of God saying, hippopotamus, really? What are you thinking? That's ridiculous. I'm not saying hippopotamus. We're going to call it horse. Okay? We have no record of that. What we see God doing is saying, you decide, and I will honor your decisions. Whatever you call it, that's what we'll call it. And so we see from the very beginning, one of the qualities that God designed into Adam and Eve is to take authority and to take responsibility. And God did that. That's part of being fruitful. You'll notice that God gave them authority, dominion over the animals. How would they have taken care of these animals after they had named them? When you've studied and thought and pondered and gotten close enough to name an animal, that is what qualifies you to exercise authority on behalf of that animal. It brought them into a very different relationship with creation when they were given that kind of authority and that kind of responsibility. It's a very intimate process. They really had to see and know each creature that they were to exercise authority on behalf of. Now, what else did God give them to do? God gave them the garden. What do we know about the garden? If you read in Genesis, the account Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, we'll see Genesis 1, verses 26 through 29, and then Genesis 2, verses 7 and 8 and 15 in particular. Okay? And then further on in Genesis 2, the verses that are 18 through 21 and verse 25. So you can read all of both chapters, but we're just focusing in on the particular descriptions of what God gave them to do. Now it says that he gave them the garden, and the garden was beautiful. And the garden was filled with all kinds of things for them to eat. Every plant God gave to them for their use. And so we see that there was both beauty and productivity. And God said, it's yours now. You take care of it. And that word dominion doesn't mean exploit. It doesn't mean drive something into the ground for your own benefit. Dominion means to take stewardship of, to be given the responsibility to cultivate and care for something. And so God gave them this beautiful, productive place, and he said, it's yours. Now make it better. Take good care of it. And we know from the parable that Jesus tells, when one worker was given one talent, one was given 3, and one was given 5, they were commended because they brought an increase for the master. And so God didn't want Adam and Eve to just sit there and watch the trees grow. He said, no, I'm giving you responsibility and authority. Make it more productive, produce things, increase. increase wealth. And I've given you something beautiful. Make it more beautiful. The value of creativity, the value of beauty. And so we see from the very beginning, God saying, get your hands dirty, boys and girls. Okay? He didn't leave them servants to do the gardening. He said, you do it. He didn't leave them 45-volume instruction manual. He didn't tell them what to do. Well, how would they know? Same way you and I would know. They had to figure it out. They had to watch. They had to experiment. They had to try what worked and what made things grow and where they should be planted, how they should be tended. And we know that God walked with them in the cool of the evening in the garden. They could have asked. They could have discussed. And so again, we see the qualities that God gave them. I want you to value and create beauty. I want you to think and experiment and get your hands dirty and work hard. I want you to observe. I want you to take risks. I want you to think and analyze. That's part of being fruitful. And there's an honor and a dignity in that perhaps we've lost in parts of the world. Oh, I don't want to get my hands dirty. I want to get educated past that. That didn't seem to be a problem for God and Adam. There was an honor and a dignity in working hard, being productive. There's a value to the arts, creating beauty. We see it in the very beginning, don't we? Now, there's one last portion that I want us to look at that's very significant to help us to understand who were Adam and Eve. When God told them, I want you to multiply and make more of you, okay, who was he talking to? And in the very end of Genesis 2, the verses 18 and then 21 through 25, he describes how Eve was created, how she was taken out of the rib of Adam. He was allowed to name the animals by himself. Why? Well, because he realized, I am alone. And when he was given a partner, he was ready to give her the value and the honor that he was supposed to have for his partner. And so he said, wow, wow, there's someone for me. Not someone to do all the work. He'd already been doing the work. Someone that is part of my soul. Someone so I'm not alone. Someone to share this beauty with. Someone to talk over these ideas with. Someone to enjoy the animals with. Someone to walk together with me in the garden with God. And there's a beautiful description where it says, they were naked and they were not ashamed. I want you to close your eyes with me for a minute. And I want you to imagine for just a minute a world without shame. What if there was no shame? When we think about being naked, our first response is, I'd be so ashamed. I want to cover the hidden parts of me. Well, why? Because we're afraid that we'll be seen. We're afraid we'll be rejected. We will feel vulnerable. We could be taken advantage of. Imagine a world where there's no shame. You don't even know the meaning of the word. Think of your life without shame. Think of your relationships with no fear. Wow. That was God's intention from the beginning. So you can open your eyes. So we see when God was saying, I want you, I want more of you. He was saying, I want more of you who can walk together with absolute transparency, vulnerability, without fear, without shame. I want men and women who together can take responsibility and they can exercise authority to increase blessing and beauty, productivity on the earth. I want you to think, I want you to reason, I want you to talk things over with each other and with me. And together, we're going to make this world an even better place. That's who he was talking to. That's what he wanted. Those are some of the words, some of the meaning of the word fruitfulness that we see in the very beginning. Isn't that an amazing, rich picture?